Good afternoon, everyone. In this generation where COVID-19 existing, physical education is a must. Before we start this online roundtable discussion, I am Natasha Mae Garma from BPED 2A, your host moderator, and I am with Mr. Ric Josh Obispo for the education category, Ms. Honeylyn Nialda for global or international category, Ms. Michelle Datu for legal category, and Mr. Isidro for practitioners. Let's now jump into our main discussion, which is the issue and challenges in physical education and sports among Bataeños amidst COVID-19. Life begins with ourselves. Safety is always in our hands. Now that we are facing the reality, our only one powers and shields will ourselves. This generation was really hard. A lot of our actions was been limited. We need to adapt and learn to adjust things in its normal place. Most of the people lost their interest in some specific things, specifically in outside activities. No more gym, jogging with friends, and many more. They also limit their actions because of the threat of COVID-19 pandemic. People start to manage their own time with their family and friends instead of having gatherings outside. But it is not a problem. We can do something about it. New normal has been invented. Everything has become virtual. The biggest problem is what is the role of PE and sports in our community in this time of pandemic. Many of us thought that we couldn't do anything because we were already tied up in our house and there was no possible solution about the situation. Besides, keeping ourselves at home, we can also do some exercises to become more physically fit and mentally awake. Physical activity is a must. You may conduct a routine for you to develop your stamina, immune system, and your footwork even when we are at home. Doing some sports like basketball drills in your garden, volleyball footworks, and some small plays can be possible. If we have the courage to do so, then it is possible. To elaborate this information, let's proceed first to our first speaker for the legal category. Our first question is, what are the common observations, practices, causes, and risk of factors for physical education and sports in a schooling settings, challenges, and issues amidst COVID-19 among Bataeños? Ms. Michelle Datu, please take the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. To answer that question, in the face of COVID-19, many restrictions been implemented, including physical distancing measure, lockdown of businesses, school, and overall social life, which become very hard for everyone, especially among Bataeños. In legal liability, issues in physical education include lack of supervision, inadequate instruction, and unsafe facilities and damages equipment. All of these issues can be settled if we will given a time to have a proper solution and plan to fix it, but because of COVID-19, the issue has not been fixed yet. In line with this, Commission on Higher Education or CHED released a memorandum from the Executive Secretary, which is COVID Advisory Number 6. Under this advisory was about the continuation of suspended classes in all levels and school activities, including on-the-job training and internship of the entire Luzon region. The impacts of this advisory on physical education and sports have been transformative, complex, and highly uneven. Most events have been cancelled, closed, and postponed. Causes of all schools to close and changes of everything, which include travel, transportation, tourism, and many more that related to event of physical education and sports. Because of this, it brings difficulty in adapting the traditional practices to an online setting. That's
Thank you,
all.
Ms. Michelle Datu, for that wonderful insight. So in addition with that, most of us can't observe the good action of our government. But the truth is, they are looking and seeking for a solution in order to provide a good quality of service. So now, let's jump into the next speaker, Mr. Ric Josh Obispo, for the education category.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. Education today faces a very challenging world brought about by the pandemic. As observed, most Filipino children were not able to read due to lack of knowledge on the techniques and methods for basic reading. The application of the basic practices that is more effective during face-to-face interaction. Because of the pandemic, most learners and teachers were challenged by the learning modality that should be used in order to facilitate learning and be effective. Moreover, the fear of every parent or individual to catch the virus when exposed.
Thank you, Mr. Ric Josh Obispo. So one of the most affected was the education. A lot of us experience different problems such as depression and anxiety when it comes to education. We cannot meet the expectation of what the educations in real life. As of now, as the result of this pandemic, our quality of education decreased. So for our third speaker, let's hear Ms. Honeylyn Nialda for the global category for her insights.
Thank you, Ms. Garma, for that question. Everyone knows that physical education in sports makes important contribution to economic and social development. Since the COVID-19 pandemic has spread to almost every country in the world. Measurement of social and physical distancing bans on businesses, schools, and all social life that have become common to contain the spread of illness. It has also disrupted many normal aspects of life, such as exercise and physical activity. The common causes of COVID-19 in Bataan, the person who came from outside Bataan, they didn't follow the protocol to 14 days quarantine themselves. And mostly, they want to go somewhere or occasions and events. The risk of this is physical education and sports. Student is not experiencing this opportunity in schools because of COVID-19. It's more challenging, especially when it's executing their performance and issues in some students in Bataan was not participating because in lack of phone storage, internet problem connection, and also to shame to watch their video or performance of professors and classmates while in online class.
Thank you, Ms. Honeylyn Nialda, for that insight. So not just our healthy lifestyle affected with this pandemic, but also our global and international status. As what I have said a while ago, a lot of activities has been limited because of the risk of this pandemic. Many of us or many of our workers suffered from having an insufficient income. Some travel agency also fell down because of many possible things that we can happen or that is happening inside and outside the Bataan. So for our last speaker, may I call Mr. Luis Isidro for her insights about practitioner category.
So thank you very much, Ms. Natasha Garma. As a practitioner, since that we encounter some changes, especially at the same time, the common factor and risk that physical education encounter in school settings in this pandemic is lack of physical performance or actual performance, since that physical education is a psychomotor aspect and it needs a kinesthetic action to learn. Again, since the school is prepared to do an alternative way on how to function of physical PE in relevant. Still, learning is going on.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Isidro, for that insight. And now, let's move on to our second question. Our second question is, what are the regulating and statutory policies and guidelines that examine social and economic determinants of PE of Bataenes? Now, let's start with our legal category, Ms. Michelle Datu.
Okay. To answer that question, we will base in a legal basis. Based from the legal basis of physical education in the Philippines that can be found in Philippine Constitution of 1987, Article 14, Section 19, it is stated that shall promote physical education and encourage sports program, league competitions, and amateur sports, including training for international competition, to foster these self-disciplines, teamwork, and excellence for the development of a healthy and alert citizenry. Second is all educational institutions shall undertake a regular sports activities throughout the country in cooperation with athletic clubs and other sectors. That constitution implemented to ensure this kind of policies for the improvement of physical education in the country, specifically Bataeños. It will lead to develop physical fitness, self-discipline, strengthen peer relationship, and improvement of self-esteem and confidence of the students as well as teachers, necessitate improvement models and redesign initiatives. This agenda depends on knowledge about the malleable social determination of the PE system, particularly social institutional reproduction dynamics, occupational socialization, and public policy. That's all.
Thank you, Ms.
You.
Michelle Datu, for that very informative insight of yours. Now, let's move on for our education category, Mr. Ric Josh Obispo.
In accordance with the principle guiding the BELCP, the department establishes the DepEd required health standards to ensure the protection of the health, safety, and well-being of learners, teachers, and personnel, and prevent the further transmission of COVID-19. The policy facilitates the safe return of learners, teachers, and personnel to school, CLCs, and offices. At the time and to the extent as will be allowed by the DOH, the IAFT, or the President. The policy is informed by relevant official guidelines uh, completed by other credible sources and balanced by DepEd's own risk assessment.
So that's all for our education category. Now, let's move on for our global or international category. Ms. Honeylyn Nialda.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. Schools internationally are below stress to enhance scholar getting to know result in conventional instructional subjects. But faculties aren't simply location where college students visit pursue instructional achievements. Faculties ought to be nurturing environments that expand the complete child together with their social, emotional, bodily, and intellectual well-being. If kids and younger humans are to emerge as responsible, effective, and satisfied contributors of society, they want to a holistic training that prepares them now no longer only for cognitive tasks, social, and expert opportunities, demanding situations and obligations in life.
Thank you, Ms. Honeylyn Nialda, for your insight about that question. So, for our practitioner category, may I call Mr. Luis Isidro to give his insight in this question.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Natasha Garma. Actually, the revision of guidelines and policies of the school, particularly in physical education, is a competence of every student to avail the performance in which the quiz is gathered in online classes. Because not all the students can be attached on the kind of platform may the schools consider for their guidelines is the social economic of all the students. Uh, but since uh, that we are almost 2 years or more than a pandemic, I believe that guidelines of the school in terms of these issues is still proven.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Isidro, for your insights. Now, let's move on to our third question. Our third question is, what platforms, best practices, interventions, or mechanism to identify physical education in sports and socioeconomic consequences of poor preparations on academic and health emergencies like COVID-19 or Bataendos? To start with this question, let's start with our education category, Mr. Ric Josh Obispo.
School physical education represents the largest youth personal academic intervention worldwide. Given that physical education is a compulsory subject in many school curricula, although usual in-person physical education programming is not without challenges. School closures due to COVID-19 created a new host of obstacles. As preschool through 12th grade, physical education shifted to virtual learning platforms. Physical education teachers and administrators were chiefly required to deliver robust virtual programs without adequate training and provision of appropriate teaching and learning resources. Online learning is, by its own nature, inequitable for school-age youth, due in part to unequal access to technology, consistent high-speed internet, adult supervision and sports, uh, and support, sports, equipment, and physical space to participate in online physical education. Additional inequities are represented for youth with uh, disabilities who are particularly dependent on school physical education for personal academic engagement and face barriers to being physically active in home environments. If designed appropriately, online physical education may have the potential to reduce health disparities related to inequitable opportunities for personal academic engagement. The perspectives of physical education teachers are paramount to design of online physical education resources that optimally supplement and support quality in-person programming, taking into consideration the, the diverse learning and personal academic needs for students. In light of uh, pervasive inequities in youth personal academic, this study applied a diversity, equity, and inclusion framework.
Thank you, Mr. Ric Josh, for your insight. So, as the COVID-19 pandemic revenges the world, it is essential to attend to the educational needs of children and youth during the crisis. This document is intended to support education leaders and various levels of educational governance. So next, we have our practitioner category, Mr. Luis Isidro.
So thank you, Miss Natasha Garma. So the COVID-19 has resulted in schools shut all across the world. Globally, over 1.2 billion children are out of school. As a result, education has changed dramatically. The distinctive rise of e-learning, whereby teaching is undertaken remotely, and the digital platforms like Google Classroom, Google Meet, Zoom, and even Facebook using the Messenger. Department of Education called up the attention of all the teachers in, in this pandemic, so that they conduct webinar on how to deliver learning using different platforms. If you are a health and uh, physical educator, chances you are mattered that question is some form when pandemic forced school to shift to a mostly distance learning format. Uh, at that time, it quickly became apparent that typical lesson and practice will not transition easily to remote learning. So teaching physical education during pandemic will be no more will need, would be no longer simple task. Even those of us who consider ourselves techie or something computer literate. With experience teaching online of using online instructional tools, had to uh, reimagine our face-to-face courses as we shift to pandemic pedagogy. In response to uncertainty, the physical education community banded together to share online content resources, instructional strategies, and engage activities for distance learning. Physical education has been one of the most challenging subjects to teach online, not for only because the concept or connection, but we consider the status of the student additional to this situation in this in the mental health. COVID-19 sparked fears of an impending economic crisis and recession. Social distancing, self-isolation, and travel restrictions have led to reduced work workplace across all economic resources or sectors. Instead, they have over or they have alternative alternative work arrangement or AWA. They have 4 hours at a 3 days times 3 times a week divided by two schedule, which is AM schedule and PM schedule. Here in our town, even in other side of the world, we are not ready for this pandemic. But they challenge themselves to continue the department of development and welfare of the students. With the help of community, different sectors together, as a physical educator practitioner, no matter what challenges it is, the education of our students never stops.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Isidro, for your insight. I agree with that. With the help of each other, we can step by step surpass these challenges that we are facing right now, which is the COVID-19. By the help of many experts, we can stand and be a voice to make it possible. As the practitioners experience, they work a lot and sacrifice their safety just to give informative lessons and also a guidance for everyone. So now let's jump for our global or international sector, international category, Miss Honeylyn Nialda.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic pressured an extraordinary worldwide, shut down that closed faculties for months. In many nations, faculties have been closed to college students, and instructors directed instructional sports remotely through virtual gadgets or homeschooling resources. From that is displaying how this COVID-19 Off-house schooling has affected the bodily habit of each pupils in grade 1 to grade 10. All college students are alleged to have at least 60 minutes of bodily habit each day in faculty. The COVID-19 pandemic has pressured an extraordinary worldwide shutdown that has significantly modified what is meant to be a teacher, a pupil, or even a figure with inside the month that faculties were closed. While maximum faculty structures usually require day-by-day bodily attendance at some points of weekdays remaining and produce college students collectively in massive organization to study in collective endeavor the remaining of faculties and the months of social distancing have shifted the website online of gaining knowledge to the home, wherein gaining knowledge of takes place usually by myself or with assist of own circle of relatives, individuals via the technology available, physical education, and preferred lively recess time that might usually take area in faculty were both cancelled absolutely or made part of virtual homeschooling. Bataan has a best policy when you're not in legal age, you don't have right to go outside and mostly need the permission to the place where you shoot your video or playing the particular activity. They have common policies in other provinces. They need to make sure the safety of students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Honeylyn and Nialda. I agree with that. In the face of COVID-19, many millions of jobs are therefore at risk globally, not only for sports professionals, but also for those in related retail and supporting services industries connected with leagues and events, which includes travels, tourism, infrastructure, transportation also, catering and video broadcasting, among others. So professional athletes are also under pressure to rescheduling their trainings while trying to stay fit at home, and they risk losing professional sponsors who may not support them as initially agreed. In addition with that, the economic repercussions, the cancellations of games also impact many social benefits of global and regional sports events, which can cement social cohesions, contribute to the social and emotional excitement of fans, as well as their identification with athletes, leading to greater physical activity of individual globally. For our next speaker, may I have Miss Michelle Datu for our legal category.
Hello? Naririnig ba ako?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. For the legal sector, the outbreak of this COVID-19 caused lockdowns at the national levels, online learning of students, closures of schools, gyms, stadiums, pools, dance and fitness studios, and other establishments seems to present a logical solution to enforce social distancing with communities. Prolonged closures tend to have a disproportionately negative impact on the most vulnerable student during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the world begins to recover from COVID-19, there will be significant issues to be addressed to ensure the safety of sporting events at all levels and well-being of sporting organization. In the short term, this will include the adaptation of events to ensure the safety of athletes, fans, and vendors, among others. In the medium term, in the face of anticipated global recession, there may also be a need to take measures to support participation in sporting organization, particularly for youth sports. This policy stated is already mandated and implemented, that declared by the province of Bataan. It's been a regulation whereas all Bataeños complied to this policy for readiness and preparation if ever we experience like COVID-19 again. This whole situation happened worldwide has caused a major difficulty to everyone, especially for students who couldn't experience face-to-face classes because of restriction that been implemented for the safety of school staff, administration, teachers, students. So for the to examine the issue of school reopening by presenting country's current measures and providing policies pointers aim to ensure that the pandemic does not further hinder the inclusion of vulnerable students in education system.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle Datu, for that very informative insights of yours. So now let's move on for our fourth question, the last but not the least. The question is, share or response, share or present, propose and explain holistic and integrative approaches to prevent academic crisis and management and ensure readiness on public health emergencies for Bataeños in the context of physical education and sports. To formally start this question, may I start with our education category, Mr. Ric Josh Obispo.
For the last time, Ms. Garma, thank you. Although there have been many struggles over the past year, the silver lining for the COVID-19 pandemic is that health and physical educators have learned many lessons that can have positive impact on students' learning as we return to the classroom, gymnasium, and the other learning spaces. Promoting positive social interaction and student engagement through purposeful reflection and collaboration in terms of physical education.
Thank you, Mr. Obispo. In addition with that, in education, the importance of physical education to the physical, cognitive, and social aspect of child development has been acknowledged by many federal, state, and local health and education agencies. So for our next category, we have the practitioner, Mr. Luis Isidro.
So for the last time, thank you very much, Ms. Natasha Garma. As practitioner, we are the ones who implemented the health protocol while we need to adjust in the situation for us to learn even if we can perform a specific task in face-to-face. In short, we can do a certain activity in our home, for example, mind game or any physical game that less physical interaction.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Isidro. I am agree with that, with your very informative insights that in sports we can do a certain activity in our home. So the next category is our global or international category, Miss Honeylyn Nialda.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. And this is my last question to your last question. This is an answer question for that. Analyzing discipline behavior and academic performance in the context of educational community. Education is emphasized as an important topic for analyzing students' behavior. Physical education teachers think positive students' outcome to support them. Therefore, the main purpose was to determine a predictive model of the discipline, behavior, and academic performance students and teachers. Therefore, discipline is in the school environment has become a major concern of the education community as is an important indicator of the success of the teaching and learning process. The educational structure aims to encourage physical education, physical behaviors to create the most favorable conditions for the education's learning process that enables the student to perform properly.
Thank you for your insight for the category of global or international category, Ms. Honeylyn Nialda. So for our last category in this last question, may I have Ms. Michelle Datu for the legal category.
Thank you, Ms. Garma. So for the last question or presentation, we all know that preventing academic crisis and management is very hard. So it increased when pandemic started, and because of this, many student teachers and school staff had their experience of difficulties to continue their normal activity. To ensure the readiness on the public health emergency brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, pursuant to Section 2, Article 14 of the 1987 Constitution, as reiterated in Republic Act Number 10533 or the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, the constitutional mandate of the state is to establish, maintain, and support a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the needs of the people, the country, and the society at large. Government should work collaboratively with health and care services, schools, and civil society organizations representing various social groups to support physical activity at home.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle Datu. And that is the overall insight of all category in the fourth question that is given in this discussion. To close this online roundtable discussion, we learn a lot of things that we can use as a guide and support while experiencing this kind of pandemic. Also, we realize different things that we can involve ourselves into more matured individual when it comes to decision making and keeping ourselves in our safety zone. Um, we have done here an advocacy connecting to our situation right now, and that is hashtag physical education for COVID solution and hashtag BPED Bataenyo.